We have an item 2.3, resolution on safety and security in our schools and communities. Mr. Post.
Thank you, Mr. Durso. Before I introduce the resolution, I'm just going to read some messages that I've received from students over the past 13 days. Andrew from Lakelands Park Middle School wrote me, "At Churchill, Northwest, Walter Johnson, Clarksburg, and Damascus, there have been threats or weapons brought to school. What if where I go to is next? How are students supposed to learn if our safety can't be ensured?" Maddie from Ridgeview Middle School messaged me, "Matt, somebody threatened our school today and I feel unsafe. We need to do more on gun safety in this community." Another email reads, "My name is Riley and I'm afraid to go to school tomorrow. I absolutely love my high school, but what happened at Clarksburg hits too close to home. If it happened there or Parkland or Sandy Hook, why couldn't it happen to me?" Jillian from Blake High School sent me a message saying, "I honestly feel scared to go to school because I feel like you can't trust anyone. Something needs to be done." Something needs to be done. The fever has to break in this country. These profound feelings of fear and anxiety in what should be our safest institution, it can't persist. And what's most frustrating about this to me is that we know the solution. And it seems like we've known the solution since Columbine. Keep weapons of war out of the hands of everybody, create real mental health supports, improve background checks. But either out of cowardness or a lack of compassion, the adults in Congress have failed us. And we as students are not demanding a lot here. We're asking to not be shot. We're asking to not learn in fear. We're asking to not be stuck as the mass shooting generation. What really startled me about this shooting was, you go through and you look at the photos, and because this happened at a high school, the kids looked like me. The kids who died looked like my friends. They look like people I pass in the hallway every single day. And that weighs on you. It's difficult to go into a school and pay attention for 8 hours a day when in the back of your mind you're thinking about how someone could come in with an assault rifle and kill everyone in your class. So while these walkouts may not be safe, I understand. And kids don't feel safe in class either. For us, this is not a cosmetic or partisan issue. This is not the usual Democratic versus Republican or liberal versus conservative. This feels like life or death. And by the way, I've heard a lot these past few weeks about how us teenagers are going to save the day. We may be leading this effort, but it is going to take all of us. It's going to take a multi-generational, inclusive effort to fix this mess. And if we as a country are going to now embrace student leadership, we have to embrace all student leadership. If we are going to start listening to the student voice, we also have to listen to the students who are demonized and portrayed as radical for participating in movements like Black Lives Matter against wrongs which are just as destructive and evil as what happened in Florida for even more people. So, whereas the safety of students...
Mr. Post, I'm going to just come back to you for your resolution. I just wanted to make a statement before we get to that, and then we'll have an opportunity for board members and the superintendent. We have all been reluctant witnesses to the devastation visited upon the students, staff, parents, and the community of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School of Parkland, Florida. 14 students and 3 staff members were killed, and numerous others suffered serious injuries from a lone gunman on February 14th. Our Board of Education stands in solidarity with the Douglas High School community in expressing condolences along with applauding the students and staff for their courage in the face of this horrible tragedy. Today we have a resolution written and put forward by our student member of the board, Mr. Matthew Post. Young people nationwide are speaking up and forcing conversations over the prevalence of guns in our communities and the reality that school-age youth are increasingly becoming victims of gunshots in classrooms and schools, places that must remain a safe haven, and refuge for both students and adults. Also today, we join the larger community in the crucial conversations about keeping our schools safe from weapons and violence. After Mr. Post has read his resolution, I will invite Board of Education members and the superintendent to make comments. I would like a colleague now to move the green sheet.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Mr. Post.
Whereas the safety of students and staff is a priority of the Montgomery County Board of Education, as safe learning environments are necessary for academic achievement and emotional well-being, and whereas Maryland law prohibits firearms, knives, and deadly weapons of any kind on public school property and gives Montgomery County Public Schools the authority to develop and apply stringent regulations and procedures to keep our schools safe, and whereas the Montgomery County Board of Education supports efforts to create safer, more peaceful schools that are free from the destructive influence of violence, and whereas the horrific tragedy at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, Florida, on February 14, 2018, has generated a national conversation on gun violence and has caused significant anxiety among our parents, teachers, and students, and whereas Parkland students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, Florida, are planning a March 24th march on Washington, D.C., called March for Our Lives, to emphasize the need for increased gun control measures, and whereas the Montgomery County Board of Education is committed to preparing students to be active citizens in our democracy, now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education extends sincere condolences to the students, staff, families, and community of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, Florida, on the deaths of their students and staff, and be it further resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education urge national and state policymakers to pass legislation intended to reduce gun violence and protect our students and staff, and be it further resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education strongly endorse the March for Our Lives on March 24, 2018, and encourage our community to participate, and be it further resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education recognize and applaud efforts by our students to participate in the democratic process and demonstrate safely on campus, and be it further resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education direct the superintendent of schools to continue to urgently review the school district's safety and security preparedness and provide a comprehensive report to the Montgomery County Board of Education outlining short and long-term recommendations for appropriate enhancements no later than April 12, 2018.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that is unanimous. We will now entertain board comments. Mrs. Evans?
Sure. Thank you for reading that resolution, Mr. Post. And as Mr. Durso stated, I too stand in solidarity with the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School families. As a parent, I can't even imagine what they've gone through, and just really proud of our students for starting, or not starting, but really moving the needle on this national conversation. I wanted to state that the day after the event, we were at Clarksburg High School, and as a Montgomery County resident, as a parent, as a board member, I was very proud of how we handled the Clarksburg situation. Our staff, our partnership with the Montgomery County Police Department, it worked fluidly, and most importantly, just really happy that our students, when they saw something, they heard something, that they said something, and that's really important that our students continue to do that. So I just want to continue to lift our students up, to say that we are here for you, that we're trying to continue to ensure that our schools are safe here. And I also wanted to mention that, our administrators, our teachers, our staff, they're really being tasked with having these courageous conversations with our students and helping to make them feel comfortable and feel safe. I've heard about principals having community circles in their schools to have a conversation with their students to see how they're feeling, to kind of touch, define what the pulse of the students are, and it's helping some of our students to want to continue to come to school, to not have that fear. So we just want everyone to know that we're working really hard to keep our students safe and secure, and continue to please tune into our public hearings, send your kids to school, and just know that we're thinking of you and we're trying to make our schools safe.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes, it is with great sadness that we all sit here and have this discussion. As a rookie board member, just, back in 1999, I attended a student town hall at Walt Whitman High School immediately following Columbine. Richard Riley, the Secretary of Education, came and conducted that town hall, and the students in 1999 said, you know, I look around the building and I don't feel safe anymore. You know, and we took lessons learned from Columbine, working more closely with the police, doing drills. State law mandates so many drills during the year, not just for fire drills, but for shelter in place. We called them Code Red, Code Blue drills. After Newtown, it took my breath away how tragic Newtown was. And here we are, sitting today, having this same conversation. And as I watch politicians on the national level and they say, it's a time for prayers, it's not a time for discussion about gun control, when else is it? You know, and I commend the students in Florida, I commend our students. I say a prayer every single day that I'm a school board member that this kind of event never happens in Montgomery County. You know, the right to bear arms is the Second Amendment in the Constitution, but the Declaration of Independence, which really established this country, talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in that order. And life is the most essential, fundamental right of every single American. I cannot believe that, you know, this kind of tragedy can happen in our schools. It can happen in our churches. It can happen when people attend a nightclub or a concert venue. And, you know, I'm sure there are many responsible gun owners, but, you know, I just do not see that an AR-15 is a reasonable weapon, especially in the hands of folks with mental illness. And I heard the president talking about arming teachers. And, you know, I also heard a study that, you know, even highly skilled police officers in New York City using a handgun had only a 20% accuracy rate. I heard that there are 15 million, because there are no records on total number of assault weapons sold, but 15 million AR-15s in this country. That is an alarming number to me, if that is true. And, you know, it's about the guns, stupid. We have to do something. And I fully support students expressing their rights to free speech. And I encourage everyone, if they don't participate in the March 24th March for Life, March on DC, to at least write to congressmen and senators. And I know our representatives are fully in support of gun control, but pick some other representative and write them, contact them, but because our children's lives depend on it.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Dr. Daka?
Well, after the eloquence of Mr. Post and Ms. O'Neill, I really don't have a lot to say. I just want to tell you today, I did read to kindergartners. They were lovely, they were cute, they were fun, they participated with the book. It was like, Are You My Mother? I think that's what it was called. The reason I brought that up is that I just can't believe that children that young and a little bit older in elementary school were killed in Connecticut, and we did nothing. Our lawmakers did nothing. I just hope that the fact that our young people are out there condemning this and making speeches and calling people together, I hope that makes a difference. I don't know how our legislators, and not all of them, can be so hard-hearted as to allow this to continue. This whole business with guns just really frightens me and is so unnecessary. We don't need that. Anyway, I'm just appalled that we're in this state. I'm appalled about what's happening with this country, how some of our feelings are being encouraged, that we were not expressing before, or maybe not even believing before. So there's a lot going on here, but I congratulate the students. And I don't know whether should I mention this, but they're going to be meeting at Blair. Students are going to be involved at Blair tonight. We cannot be there because we have the board meeting. I want everybody to know that we would be there.
Yes, we would.
But we have to be here for the kind of work that we absolutely have to do. Jamie Raskin is going to be there, and the delegation, the representative from, yes, what's his name?
Congressman Deutsch.
Deutsch. Oh, that's right, it's Deutsch. Is also there, and that was the school in his area, Parkland. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daco. Mrs. Ortman-Faust.
Yes, thank you so much for reading the resolution, Mr. Post, on behalf of the students and all of us. I'm glad that you mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement. We've lost not only so many kids in our school shootings, but we've lost disproportionately a whole lot of kids of color. And today, 6 years ago, Trayvon Martin was killed by someone who had assigned themselves as neighborhood watch person. Jordan Davis was 17. Music was too loud, so Jordan was killed. Denisha McBride was 19. She knocked on a door because she had a car breakdown and was shot through the door. Michael Brown, too many to mention. I'm glad that the students now are taking action and taking the lead for all of these young lives that have been lost. So many people ask me all the time, what are we doing in our schools to teach civics? We need to teach kids about what they can do and what the government does and how they can take action, and they're not learning enough about civics. And I think that the kids are learning as much as possible right now so that they can make a difference, and I really applaud their efforts. I was at Wheaton High School along with Ms. Mondrowski last week for an AP government class where Congressman Jamie Raskin spoke to the students very eloquently, and he talked to them about the importance of activism, and they asked about guns and gun control and very specific questions on a whole range of issues. And they said, how do we stand up for what we believe when we're admonished by it, admonished for it? And he talked about the case of Tinker versus Des Moines Independent School District, which was the protection of First Amendment rights when Mary Beth Tinker wore a black armband. She was 13 years old to school to support a truce in Vietnam. And the Supreme Court ruled that that was her right. And the decision was, as long as an action didn't cause interference. And he said that what's happening right now is causing interference in our schools. It's the guns that are causing interference in our schools. When kids don't feel safe, as Mr. Post mentioned, when moms tell me that their kids are, she's listening to their kids have conversations about when they go to their classes, they're looking for where the safest place is to hide, or they're upset about not being able to have their phone in class because what do they do if something happens and they can't call anybody? We had 650 students that were picked up by their parents by a social media threat that turned out not to be credible, but everybody is very scared right now. That's all very disruptive, causes a lot of interference in our schools. And I know this is, as one of my colleagues said, this is, I think Ms. Evans said, this is putting a lot of strain on our administrators and teachers who are very concerned and trying to figure out what to do to best support our kids. In one class, one parent told me that the kids had begged a teacher to get out of a test the next day because they felt so strongly about wanting to march. And they explained to the teacher, they had told their parents that it was a prearranged absence, that they really wanted to go. And she said, no, you have to take this test this day. It's an unexcused absence. And they knew that if you miss a unit test, what I was told, the students said, was their grades would be demolished. But they went to class, and the windows were open, and the helicopters were flying above, and the students asked one more time, and the teacher said, go, do what you need to do. And the students marched, and they marched down to the Capitol, and they were interviewed by dozens of, I was there, I saw dozens of news crews from around the world as well as locally. They were eloquent, they were articulate, they knew exactly what they wanted to say. You can read all of their interviews. And they weren't done marching at the Capitol. Then they marched to the White House a half-hour away in the heat. And they kneeled down in front of the White House in silence, and they raised their hands to the air. And they read the names of the students that were killed in Florida. So when people dismiss our kids and say they just want to get out of class, I just really have to beg to differ with that. And I think our kids are doing the best job they can to be leaders for our country right now where adults have failed them. Thank you.
Mr. Post, additional comments? Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to just say thank you to our superintendent, Dr. Smith. He did send out 2 letters, actually, delineating the school system's regrets and condolences and assuring our community that we're all here to keep all of our students and staff safe. So thank you for that, Dr. Smith. I also want to thank all of those who have written to us individually and on the Board of Education email. While initially we defer to the superintendent to speak for the system, I want to leave no doubt where we stand individually and collectively as a board. We are heartbroken about what occurred in Florida. We support our students. One of the things that we actually teach here in Montgomery County in national, state, and local government is, I think we still have that unit on change. And one of the ways that you bring about change is by petition, it is by protest. And certainly the Tinker case and the Inri Galt case as well are landmark Supreme Court decisions that really speak to the fact that students do not lose their right to free expression and protest at the schoolhouse door. So I, too, am very proud of our students, not only in Florida, but here in Montgomery County, and really around this country, because what they've really done is facilitate a national discussion, if you will, debate over the efficacy, or really, do we even need these guns? And certainly an AR-15 is not something that anyone should have. Its very name, assault rifle. We don't need anyone assaulting anyone or anything. That includes animals as well. And so I want to just associate myself with our colleagues, my colleagues' comments, and just say I'm really very hopeful because of the actions of our students that we will see some change in terms of all of these guns, which really have no place in American life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Ms. Mondrowski?
Yes, thank you. So I think pretty much everything has already been said and very well articulated. I want to thank our staff and Mr. Post for working on putting our collective message together so well. And I just want to express that, how much my heart goes out to the families and the community of Parkland, Florida, for the incredible tragedy that they have gone through. I too want to give kudos to all of our students for the voice and the conversation that they have started, but the message and the movement that they've kind of invoked through all of this. I think that the rally on the 24th is going to be an amazing thing, and I hope and encourage everyone to who's able to be there and to be supportive of our students. If you can't go there, to just do what you can. As a parent and a board member, I know how hard we are trying to ensure the safety of every one of our staff and students in our schools, and I appreciate that you're continuing that work and continuing to look at additional ways that we can do more to try and protect our students. But unfortunately, we can do everything that we can possibly do, and it likely won't be enough if there aren't bigger changes and broader changes. And it does break my heart that, while we as a board and as a superintendent and administration are trying to put as many resources and as much support behind mental health supports as we possibly can. You know, it breaks my heart that there were warning signs for this particular incident and they were ignored and not addressed. And we push as hard as we can with the see something, say something. It was critical in implementing a swift and an appropriate response to what happened at Clarksburg. We need to be supportive of that. We need to look out for one another, and we need to be there for each other. And I just want to say that the say something, in my opinion, it's bigger than just if you know of something bad happening or an incident, but it's also about overall well-being of our students. If you know that somebody is suffering in some way, you need to say something. We need to be there, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that these incidents don't happen because they're not inspired to happen. And so I do hope that our federal legislators and our state legislators, I know our state has one of the strictest gun laws in the country, but I'm hoping every state legislature, every federal government person recognizes that change needs to happen, and now's the time. And so I want to thank our students for rising to this occasion and taking a very horrible, horrific situation and trying to make something worthy out of it. And so I hope that our people listen to them and respond and respect what they're doing and what they're saying, and change will happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mondrowski. I'm not sure I can add anything beyond what you've heard from our colleagues. I would just say this, that on occasion our board, we differ philosophically on occasion over different matters, but I think both those in the audience as well as our viewers can see pretty much this evening that we are all united in our concern over this issue, and that it certainly we take measures that we would not be faced with this in this county or in any county in this entire country. Dr. Smith.
Mr. Post, thank you for your very direct statement to the community, and thank you to the board for joining Mr. Post in that statement. I join my colleagues across the country to do something now at the state and national level, at the federal level, to restrict access, to keep schools safe. I'm in the school business, and I know every teacher, every front office staff, every principal, everyone who works at any of our transportation depots and any of the offices in this building, outside of our own families and our concern for them, this is certainly among the greatest fears we all have, is that something would happen to our children that we are entrusted to care for. And we need the community to join together, but we need the elected officials to take action. And whatever they can and should do, they should do now. And so I join them and really appreciate all of what the staff members have done across this community. I have no doubt for 162,000 children that there have been countless moments of comfort and reassurance and helping ease anxiety and fear among our children. I have no doubt. I was in 2 schools on Thursday, and I saw adults throughout both an elementary and a middle school helping students just relax and say, you're okay, you're here, we're here, it's going to be fine. And we need our elected officials to help it be better. It may not be perfect, but they can make it better. So thank you, Mr. Post, and everyone in the school system for all you've done.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and I am sure that we as a board and we as a community will continue to pursue this issue as much as we can and in appropriate manners.